Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Punch podcast. We will be talking about gender and the many genders that there are and the evolution of gender today. We have Aidan Grogan. But before we start, as we all know, last night was Friday night.
Friday night, I'm thinking that we just might fly away to someplace they don't know who we are. Now I'm riding shotgun in your car. We drive through the city like explorers going 65. Flowing hair flying across your face. We left on Friday, now it's Saturday. Pressed jeans buttoned up, jeans iron slipping up. Red shoes walking slow, headphones blaring 3 stacks. Sunglasses flaring out, thick watch hanging low. Studded belt pulled taut, 3 stacks on the radio. Friday night, I'm thinking that we just might run away to some place we can be who we are. We can be who we are.
Okay, thank you, Aidan, for joining me today. I want to get started with just a simple phrase. If you say there are 2 genders, that is now a very controversial statement.
It is a controversial statement because the dominant cultural narrative is now that gender is a social construct and exists on a vast spectrum with limitless possibilities.
Right. So how did we get to that point of there are 2 genders being a very controversial statement?
Well, because the left thinks that everything is a social construct. So the existence of the gender binary, male and female, they think was established by culture and religion to keep people in slavery, so to speak, and not allow them to express who they truly are. So then the idea that maleness or femaleness are sort of conditioned by your society rather than being innate. And they say that, as I've said many times, we're all just blank slates. We're all the same. And true gender is a form of expression, and it's detached from one's biological sex.
I think the distinction here for me is, as far as identification, I'm whatever you want to identify as, like as a human being, I have no problem with that. But the argument is that no, that you are the gender that you are born can fluctuate. So you could have, according to I see in your video there's 56 genders on Facebook to choose from.
Mm-hmm. But
according to mine, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 genders. And let's just go through them. There's transgender, two-spirit, cisgender, non-binary, genderqueer, gender expression, gender fluid, which is my favorite one, and then gender neutral.
Yeah, a lot of those kind of mean the same thing. And you'll notice that, did they mention non-binary in those 8 right there?
Non-binary is someone who does not identify as a man or woman, or solely as one of those 2 genders. It's often used as an umbrella term for identities that fall outside the male-female gender binary. Being non-binary means different things to different people. So this definition is purposely broad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that seems like a popular one.
It is, and it's more popular than being transgender at this point. And this is a point I wanted to make because I've looked into this, I guess, from a different angle than most conservatives. You hear a lot of conservative outrage over men and women's sports, which I think is ridiculous because you have these 6-foot buff people identifying as women and absolutely destroying females. But the trend is not just a bunch of dudes claiming to be female. First of all, there's a lot more teenage girls claiming to be male than teenage boys claiming to be female. And this woman Abigail Schreier wrote a good book called "The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters," and her hypothesis is that this is very much a social contagion, because all this came in to the media and public discourse basically around 2015. Once gay marriage was legalized, then everything became about gender and transgender, and they started airing these transgender activists on the mainstream news media. And then all of a sudden, there was just this huge explosion in adolescents wanting to change their gender. And they did an investigation in the UK into a 4,000% increase in children wanting to change their sex. A 4,000% increase. So I think we could get into the medical background of the issue, because it is a legitimate condition. There is a legitimate medical condition called gender dysphoria, which typically manifests very early on in childhood, where a boy or a girl will typically identify with the opposite sex. So a boy will prefer playing with Barbies and dressing up in girls' clothes, and will actually act in a very feminine way, will almost get along with the girls better than the boys. So there you have a legitimate circumstance where the brain does not align with the body.
Mm-hmm.
However, most children who express transgender feelings from a young age and actually are diagnosed with gender dysphoria grow out of those feelings over time. And that's what a top psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins, Paul McGue, said 70 to 80% outgrow it. And as they go through puberty and develop into adults, they become more comfortable with their body, which is why putting little kids on hormone blockers and trying to permanently alter their body before their brains are even developed is child abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that would be a controversial statement right there, Hayden. Just saying that right there, that some grow out of it and identify as a man if they were playing with Barbies, or if, they were kind of a tomboy, they go to be a female and they're perfectly fine in their lives.
Yeah, but
that doesn't happen.
Well, it does, right. It doesn't change the fact that most people do grow out of it, and they do live normal lives as the gender that they were born as.
Now, here's the question, though. What if they do, right? Here's the real issue, right? And there's no right answer, but what if one of those kids then, goes on and says, you know what, I do want to be a female, or I am a female. No, I don't want to be. I've always been a female. I want to stay out of the controversial range here. I've always been a female. Now I'm going to make the transition. Man, I wish I would have done that earlier, because now my body has changed. It's never going to be, how it could have been if I started earlier.
Yeah, well, there's all these instances right now of transgender regret where people go and get sex reassignment surgery and then they later regret it. So you have to take that into account. And the fact that most kids grow out of it means that if you encourage a child to permanently alter their body, there's a good chance that they are going to regret this later on. So that's why you have to allow them to reach adulthood, reach 18, and then they can make that decision for themselves.
According to The Atlantic, young trans children know who they are already. A new study shows that gender non-conforming kids who go on to transition already have a strong sense of their true identity.
Well, when I was a little kid, I had a strong sense that I was Spider-Man, but I still can't climb up walls, unfortunately.
I also really wanted to be a T-Rex when I was a kid. Okay, I want to get back to the point of okay, let's just establish this. I do think, would you say, so are you saying that this is all being influenced and that there are no people that are born with the mindset and have always been a female and then go on and then transition and in their mind are a female? Would you say, no, that could have gone a different way? Or do you think that you're born, like I'm saying, do you believe that you're born, that some people are born the wrong gender?
Yeah, I think there's legitimate cases of gender dysphoria. As I said, it's about 1 in 10,000 males and 1 in 30,000 females that are literally born with the brain of the opposite sex. It's actually like it doesn't align with their body. So that's legit, but it's 1 in 10,000 males, 1 in 30,000 females. It would always use it's a medical condition that typically affects boys, but for some reason,
is there any information on that as to why that would be the case?
People, there's no legit consensus on it.
Okay,
I don't know why. I think homosexuality is more common in males than females as well. No one knows exactly why. Well, I actually think homosexuality is more common in males because there's a greater degree of males who have no access to the opposite sex than females who have access to the opposite sex. If females want to find sex with a man, they can always find that. That's not really the case with men. So some more men will be more willing to experiment with homosexuality than females out of a feeling of necessity. So I don't know if that transfers into the transgender phenomenon or not, but the fact that it affects them in childhood, there seems to it's not like a personal choice that they're deciding to be transgender if they actually have gender dysphoria. Now that distinguishes from what's going on because you do have somewhat of a social contagion, because 5% of young people in America now identify as non-binary, according to that new study from Pew Research, and about 3% identify as transgender. Well, that is not 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 30,000 that actually have gender dysphoria. So what I think you're seeing is it's becoming sort of trendy. It's becoming avant-garde to experiment with gender and be gender fluid or non-binary.
Some 5% of adults younger than 30 are trans or non-binary, including 2% who are trans man or trans woman and 3% who are non-binary.
Right, yeah.
Neither man or woman aren't strictly confined to one or the other. Yeah, I think we can establish, I don't think there's any controversy in saying that young people, if they think it's kind of cool to say you're non-binary, will identify as that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think
but that is super controversial, by the way, to say. I'm going to go ahead and say that that's super, like, if someone's listening to this, I know that, some of my liberal friends are steaming right now.
Well, the thing is, I understand the transgender phenomenon more than the non-binary phenomenon, because now I went to Columbia College Chicago for 2 years, so I was around all these people. And the transgender, at least they accept that there is a gender binary. Now, a lot of them are left-wing activists, so they will reject that. But there's even a few conservatives who are transgender, like Blair White, and they will say, no, there really are two genders, and they will actually try to embody all the characteristics of the opposite sex. But the non-binary people are just this sort of, well, they're almost like the blank slates that they're advocating for, where it's impossible to tell what they are. They have there's no way to distinguish them between male and female. So it's kind of like you see these people and you think, oh, what are you? And then they have they, them pronouns, or they have its pronouns. It's very, very confusing. And
it is confusing. I was actually just reading, Ezra Miller?
No.
He's the actor who's going to be in the Flash movie, and he's got major drama going on in his life right now. But he identifies as non-binary. So I'm reading all of these stories about him and his compound where he's apparently kidnapped people and whatever. And the whole story I'm reading, I'm like, who's they? And then I realize, they keep referring back to Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
And then one. What about this phenomenon of you have to put she, her, he, him on I have to do that?
Yeah, well, that's because they're trying to normalize everyone existing on a gender spectrum. They're trying to normalize everyone having to give their pronouns so that nobody could, God forbid, be misgendered in public. And because apparently that causes just so much trauma.
Yeah. Let's get back to so there's 56 gender options on Facebook. I wanted to make the point of this proves that the metaverse is going to be so popular And because if we're going this way where you can choose, right, your gender, it just, to me, is just saying, I don't like who I am, so I'd rather be anything else. And if you could be any character, right, in the metaverse scenario, come on. I mean, make the connection here, Aidan.
Well, it's a revolt against nature, for one, because they are denying the biology that they were given, and also by modifying their body by undergoing certain very barbaric procedures, they're basically sterilizing themselves just so they can feel like they are this other identity. They are willing to just say, yes, I will never have kids because I want to remove this part of my body. And so for all humans who have existed up to the modern world, they would say, so you're undergoing voluntary self-sterilization. You're not going to pass along your genetics to a next generation. What's the point of you being alive if you're not going to have kids and if you're not going to pass along your legacy?
Have fun.
Well, that's why we're at the end of the line here, which was the subject of one of my recent videos, where I didn't say anything in the video. I just showed the headlines, and I just called the video "The End of the Line." But that's how
you shouldn't have. By the way, just on the metaverse thing, you shouldn't have a gender in the metaverse, because they have a sexual assault problem already.
Well, the metaverse is like a video game where you select and create your own character, and that's what the left is trying to do, where you get to craft your own identity. Just like in a video game where they give you a blank slate, sort of a character that has no facial features or anything. It's just a blob, and then you get to add in all the features. That's how the left sees the human being. It's just a blank slate, and then we get to craft the whole identity.
Yeah. I forgot where I was going to go. I'm sorry. I'm reading about the metaverse right now and their sexual assault problems. So apparently, like, you go in and there's like people, like, you didn't have like a barrier around you, right? And so people would like get near you in the metaverse and whisper these like weird things to like these females that were going in, which is why you need 56 gender options. Let's talk about. I do like that, even though you had transgender, like to me the biggest breakthrough was Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah,
and that to me was like the exploding, like, what's that book of where there's like the point and then everything after it? I forget. But anyways, I like that Caitlyn Jenner was portrayed on Vanity Fair for female, but they're still treating her like a sex symbol.
Yeah.
So females have made no progress. Even from transgender, for when you make the transition, we're still gonna sexualize you.
Yeah, well, that's what I've noticed with a lot of the transgender activists. They post a lot of sexualized photos of themselves because they want to show off their newly made bodies.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're gonna do that, shouldn't there be some sort of progression? Like, why are we still making females into just sex symbols even after they've been transitioned from male to female?
That's the dominant culture we live in. I'd say males are made into males are objectified too in ways that people don't really ever acknowledge. Males are treated more as human doings rather than human beings. If you're not willing to make yourself disposable and sacrifice yourself for others, then you're regarded as not being a real man.
That's true. I haven't thought about it from that angle. What are some other ones? What are some other things? Why is being a man not as great as everyone makes it out to be?
Oh, I can go on and on about this. Well, being a man is difficult because, number one, throughout all of human history, women are going to be cherished and protected. That doesn't mean they're always going to be treated right. people are going to be mistreated all the time, but females will be cherished and protected. Males are always going to be treated as disposable. If the tribe or the village is under assault, the men are going to have to go out and die to protect the women and the children.
Mm-hmm.
So just that fact alone, that as a man, you have to accept that you are not as worthy of this planet as a woman, makes being a man less awesome than it seems. And
that's why non-binary would be popular with me. I could always, like, you know, go back.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's something attacking. Well,
yeah.
You know, I'm not identifying as a man right now.
Yeah. Well, the reason that
I do that already, though. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the reason things are set up like that is because in order for the human race to continue, you need a lot of women because they have to carry a child for 9 months. But you don't need a lot of men because men can go and impregnate different women any day. So the human race can thrive if there's only 1,000 men and 10,000 females, but it can't thrive if there's 10,000 males and only 1,000 females.
Right.
So for that reason alone, men are always treated as disposable and expected to die.
It's not really fair.
It is not. Just like on the Titanic.
Well, they have to have kids now because, you know, Roe versus Wade was overturned yesterday.
Oh yeah. It's not like they can't access abortion in all their liberal states anyway.
Yeah, give us your take on Roe versus Wade being abolished.
I'm glad that the United States government does not officially support eugenics anymore. That's my take of it.
You know, I have a middle ground on this that I think would really solve all problems. Well, do you want to hear the funny take or the actual or the educational take?
I'd say go with the actual take first.
Okay, well, you need to invest. I think there needs to be access. There needs to be better access to birth control and better access to education and have a better educational system. And you wouldn't have all of these people turning into animals, basically, where they just have like 9 kids and they don't do anything. And, you know, but nobody wants to address that. We don't want to address the foundational issue again. We just want to address the problem at the end that's presented to us. Now, my funny take would be they shouldn't have abolished or they shouldn't have gotten rid of Roe v. Wade. They should have just mandated a name change. And then instead of abortion, you just called it baby killing. And then it would be baby killing clinics and not abortion clinics. And then when you walked in, they had to greet you like a Moe's or a Cece's and said, "Welcome to the baby killing clinic. How many babies would you like to kill today?"
Yeah.
But it's still legal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe it makes some of them think twice about what they're doing because the procedure is literally baby killing. It is putting an object in and vacuuming the baby's brains out and then picking it apart piece by piece. Very graphic, very gruesome. But abortion, I made a whole video about abortion, and it was fascinating to me because you had this psycho woman in New York City running around chanting "Thank God for abortion," and all the young women were screeching and applauding her. And she said,
it's never. Do you ever realize it's never like those signs? I guess it's a word count issue, but it's never like, choice. It's always like pro, like I like abortion.
Yeah, they are pro-abortion because they are pro-death. They are
not choice. I like the act.
Yes, there are people out there who like abortion. It is a form of child sacrifice. It is a resurgence of paganism, I truly believe. But anyway, you can find countless videos like that of psychos celebrating abortion. But this psycho from the actual organization, Thank God for Abortion, said abortion bans are class war. So the rich get together and they want to deprive poor women of abortion access. Now, I addressed this whole claim in depth in one of my recent videos called The Metaphysics of the Abortion Debate. And I said it's precisely the opposite. It's the super rich people who get together and say, how can we stop the plebs from having so many children, especially in the third world? And this is the National Security Study Memorandum 200, penned by Henry Kissinger in the 1970s, which became official U.S. government policy. And it was a program for international NGOs like the International Planned Parenthood Federation, the Rockefeller Created Population Council, and of course the UN, to go into Africa, give them birth control, give them abortion access, educate or indoctrinate, Kissinger's words, indoctrinate them to want to have smaller family sizes. And the reason was because, in Kissinger's words, the U.S. economy will require large and increasing amounts of resources from abroad, especially from less developed countries. So the motivation for depopulating through abortion of an entire continent is because large U.S. multinational corporations want those minerals. And if the population is expanding, they're consuming too many of the resources that the corporations want that they can sell in the West.
How did abortion? This is getting really dark, by the way. But how did abortion start?
Well, I'm sure abortions existed forever. Going back to Plato's Republic, it was a form of infanticide where they would have the baby would be born and then they decide they don't want it. So it's just like,
wow.
And that's what they did in Sparta too. It goes back to the male disposability thing when they would take the boys away from their mothers at age 7 and start them on their military training. And if they weren't physically fit enough, they would just throw them off a cliff.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't do that to the girls, but they do that to the boys.
That's true. All of the child soldiers are boys. So mark that on the list of why it's way harder to be a guy than a woman.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And
oh man, this cast is going off the rails right
But abortion in the modern world, Planned Parenthood. I can't like that. That is abortion. It's just Planned Parenthood. And that was founded by Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenicist, who said, well, it was originally called the American Birth Control League, and she wanted the undesirable people to have birth control. So this was early 20th century. There was a large influx of Eastern European and Italian immigrants, and the sort of posh white Anglo-Saxon Protestant elites didn't like all these Catholic European groups coming in there and having lots of children. They were concerned about people with disabilities reproducing. They were concerned about African Americans having too many children. And it's all based on this idea that if we only allow the best and the brightest to reproduce, we can perfect the human race. And some people are just born to be a burden on the rest, so they'd support birth control. And then later, actual abortion. And there was a Planned Parenthood memo in 1969, which was sent to the Population Council, which was created by the Rockefellers. And it advocated for adding sterilization agents to the water supply. It advocated for the legalization of abortion on demand. And then it also said that children should be taught in schools to want to have less children. It said women should be encouraged to work outside the home. All of this was written in 1969. And then Roe v. Wade came about in 1973. So now abortion's legal. The women enter the workforce en masse. Male sperm counts going down, female fertility going down. All this stuff is happening. And abortion is just a critical part of a eugenics program to shrink population and not let the so-called undesirables reproduce. But it's all done so covertly. They can't call it eugenics. They can't overtly call it population control because then it rings of Nazism. So they have to say, oh, it's actually about human rights. It's actually about female empowerment. We care about you, even though we're trying to kill you and kill your genetic code.
Right.
So all you have to do
really
is
think about it like that.
All you have to do is look at the history of the organizations who are pushing it. The Planned Parenthood, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Population Council, the American Eugenics Society, which became the Society for the Study of Social Biology after World War II, because they couldn't have all these controversial names anymore.
Mm-hmm. Was the Ford Foundation a part of this?
Oh, yes. That's why I wanted to get into the Ford Foundation, because that was... The Ford Foundation recently wrote an article, and I saw it on LinkedIn, and they're just bragging about how much they contributed to the feminist movement. And this is the Ford Foundation. This is Henry Ford, one of the richest billionaires who ever lived, and they're bragging about how they funded this woman's group and that woman's group, and they helped create the academic discipline of women's studies, which is supposedly this revolutionary feminist discipline that teaches women to destroy the patriarchy. Yet all the grants for the research for these academic disciplines at the big universities is coming from the most wealthy and powerful social engineering operations in the country. And that's what the Ford Foundation is. And I just have to mention, now that we're on the subject of the Ford Foundation, there was an investigation into all the private tax-exempt foundations, Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie specifically, in the early 50s, and was headed up by this banker named Norman Dodd. And he said the Ford Foundation invited him to visit their offices in New York City. So he went and visited the office to learn what were they really up to. Were they going to show him their archives so he could have a more thorough investigation? And they basically sat him down. And according to his account that he did in an interview in the 80s, he said that the president of the Ford Foundation told him that they are operating under directives to use their grant-making power to alter life in the United States so that it can be merged with the Soviet Union. So there's something
with the Soviet Union.
Merge the United States, the Western democratic capitalist world, with the Soviet communist world. Excuse me.
Bless you. How does that work?
I don't know how that would work. It never happened, but that's what this major capitalist foundation with huge funding from the Fortune 500 was working on accomplishing, and they openly admitted that to a guy that was leading an investigation into them.
Do they have any I saw in your video that let's bring it back to gender. What was their influence? I think you had this in your video of them influencing this gender, this rise of the different genders.
The Ford Foundation?
Yeah.
Well, I put a comment. Oh no, I didn't mention it in the video, but
we started our work on gender equality back in 1965 as the feminist movement was taking full effect in the U.S. Our work began under the frame of women's rights, but it was always about learning. In the late 60s, together with the Rockefeller Foundation and Carnegie Foundation for the advancement of teaching, we supported the development of academic field of women's studies to help us and society as a whole understand the social and cultural constructs of gender.
Everything's a social construct.
And their entanglement relationship with race, ethnicity, economic status, and more. That's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, when you learn that
we did this.
Yeah, exactly.
For the benefit of society.
Yeah, we're billionaires and we just led a revolution.
Right.
And now all you women are depressed and unhappy. Oh, sorry.
And if you're not a woman, you're also depressed and not
Actually, we wanted the other half of the population in the workforce to drive down wages and break up the family.
Well, okay, so why would they want that? Why would they want to break up the family? What is the benefit to the Ford Foundation of breaking up the family?
Well, okay, so the foundations are all interlocking groups controlled by an alliance of Wall Street interests. Now, that's a crazy claim to make. Maybe, maybe not. But it comes directly from the historian Carol Quigley, who was Bill Clinton's mentor, Harvard educated, taught at Georgetown, high-level guy. And in his book, Tragedy and Hope, which I think I've shown on these podcasts before, he said that the foundations, the biggest private tax-free foundations, are just interlocking groups. So they're all working together, and they are Wall Street interests under the guise of philanthropy. So from a basic economic perspective, if you're a corporate elite and you want more money for yourself and less money for the workers, what you'll want to do is create a labor surplus. And you could do that through more immigration. But another good way to do that is through getting women in the workplace. Because the more people there are looking for jobs, the more the workers become disposable utilities, and you could just move from one to the other. And if one employee is pissing you off in the workplace and wants,
then wages can go down too.
Yeah, exactly. And he wants a high salary or a high wage. You could just say, well, this new immigrant from El Salvador is willing to do this job for only half of what this guy's willing to do it for. So let's fire him and hire this guy from El Salvador.
Mm-hmm. Or this woman's willing to do it for less.
Yeah. And maybe they're thinking,
which is why they make 70 cents on the dollar.
Yeah. The
it's all connecting.
And also like I only realized this like a year ago when I was thinking about the old trade unionist socialists, but they were like not the socialists of today that are all liberal and bourgeois and they're, drinking their Starbucks. The actual
hanging out at the Bohemian Grove.
I guess. But the like working male socialists, like the good old boy Italians back in the day who'd be like working in the coal mines. And then they got like shotguns and they're like, then they unionize and the corporation's like, oh shit, they got guns and they are pissed off. And this is what happened with the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company in 1916. John D. Rockefeller II basically, they had dreadful working conditions. They were like cattle. And so the men, a lot of Italian and Greek immigrants, went on strike, and then they were kicked out of the company-owned housing. So then they formed a tent colony, and they all had guns. And then state militia and private security under the employment of Rockefeller come in, and they just start shooting into the tent colony, and the men get their guns and start shooting back. So when you have a bunch of pissed off, aggressive, testosterone-fueled men in the workplace, there's the chance that they will do that. They will unionize, they will rise up, they will actually fight you. Whereas if you get a bunch of women in the workplace, they're probably not going to arm themselves and threaten to kill the board of directors.
Or in modern terms, fight back, not with guns, but, like actually push back on the CEO.
Right.
Or push back on different labor laws.
Yeah, it is true that women are higher in trait agreeableness. So they are going to be less likely to voice an opinion in some cases. They'll decide to play it a little more safe. They don't want to cause controversy. They don't want to cause a heated argument in the workplace.
Very controversial statement, by the way.
Oh, I know, because there's plenty of exceptions to that. But in general, women are more agreeable than men. So they tend to avoid conflict more than men. They tend to just go along to get along a bit more.
And nobody wants to hear this, but it's been proven in every negotiation book that I've ever read, and I think this contributes to the wage gap, but women accept the first offer way more frequently than men do. And so if it's up to the CEO or the hiring person to make you accept as little money as humanly possible.
Yeah.
If that means that you are a female and you, in general, accept the first offer, then that will contribute to a wage gap within whatever company, within whatever industry you're going to be in.
Yeah.
Now, that's working on like the seed level, right? I will agree, CEOs, the promotions and everything that comes after that, yes. Is there discrimination? Yes. But for there's not going to be some standardized like federal government thing going into every office building in America and saying, you got to hire, you got to pay everyone. No, whoever accepts the dollar amount when you come to work, that's what you're worth because you accepted that. That's a super controversial thing to say, by the way.
Yeah, no disagreement there.
I get fired up on that one.
I don't know how we ended up on this topic.
The Ford Foundation.
We were talking about the Ford Foundation, and that went into labor surplus.
Well, most recently, by the way, let's go to gender again. They signed the Grant Makers United for Trans Communities pledge. With the pledge, we're building on our support of trans rights and communities by ensuring our grant making, operations, hiring practices, and communications are trans inclusive. Oh, that's fine.
Sure.
It's just a line to put on a website, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah. Well,
I don't think they actually care.
Yeah. So I want to get into the philosophy of this where it gets deeper, because in all these ancient traditions, these ancient religions, including in philosophies such as Neoplatonism and Hermeticism, there's this idea that when mankind began, everyone was just one sex, one androgynous sex, a blend or a synthesis of male and female. And then somehow, when man fell from his original state of grace, we divided into male and female. Then we divided into different races. Then we divided into different classes, so to speak. And then also in our own bodies, we divided between mind and body, or spirit and flesh. So we have a war within us as well as a war externally. So all these distinctions arise, and the great task of leftism and the revolutionary tradition is to reunionize all of these distinctions. So that means they have to bring all the races together. They have to create one world. They have to bring the genders together. So this is why I don't think that they're just trying to normalize changing your gender or making gender this vast spectrum. I think in the end, it's all going to culminate in everyone just becoming one. Everyone's going to be the sort of gray, faceless automaton that the left sort of thinks man exists as in the state of nature. Because as they try to produce more and more diversity, it has the opposite effect of resulting in just this bland conformity and homogeneity. So if everyone becomes some crazed expression of gender and you're just looking at them like, what are you? What are you? Everyone's going to just look like a blob with no key defining characteristics that you could say that's a male, that's a female, that's a beautiful woman, or that's a handsome man. And this is what the Nazis did in the camps. They would shave everyone's head. They would give them all the same clothes, and they would essentially erase the
dehumanize them.
Exactly. Erase the distinctions between the genders as a process of undermining their human dignity. Thank you, point. Ford Foundation.
Thank you, Ford Foundation.
Sounds like, you supported the Nazis.
Yeah. No, well, that was a long time ago.
Ford Motor Company gave them some fuel, had to invade Poland.
Well, we talked about this in war. You always fund both sides. Come on. That's how you make the most money.
Yeah, I guess you fund the right-wing war machine, and then you fund the left-wing social revolution.
And meanwhile, you're taking checks all across the path.
Yeah.
I think this is a good one.
Yeah.
I think, you want to talk about anything else? Anything else controversial?
Here's something controversial. I applied for a job at the Ford Foundation.
I'm going to infiltrate them from the inside.
Exactly.
Is that what you convinced yourself?
Yeah. Well, because if I got like a phone screening with them, I would just be super professional, and then when they ask if I had any questions, I'd say, "Is it true that the Ford Foundation wanted to merge the United States with the Soviet Union?"
Like the hiring manager would not know anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
What?
I saw that as part of
talk to your boss. Climb the ladder.
Yeah.
Go look at the Eyes Wide Shut party.
Go look at your archives. You and the Rockefeller Foundation.
You and the Rockefeller and the Carnegie people.
Yeah. The Rockefeller Foundation also funds women's studies, by the way.
Talking to you, it's kind of depressing because it's knowing that it's all just connected and been going on for hundreds of years, and there's this cabal of evil swirling around my head at all times.
Yep, socially engineering you.
Well, we talked about gender. We talked about abortion. We talked about a couple conspiracies with foundations. I think this is a solid episode.
I think so too.
Let's end it there before we get in any more trouble.
Yeah, like gay frogs.
I clipped that video, and that video is doing quite well.
It is doing well.
I'm not clipping any of these because I don't want to get, in the future, they're going to be like, we saw that clip of you talking about abortion and how you should call them baby killing clinics. And we just can't have that in this office environment.
Yeah.
No one's going to listen. A job interview in the future will not listen to the entire thing,
Yeah. So
there's too many episodes. There's too much content.
Yeah. You're just going to be walking around downtown. Someone's going to put a bag over your head, and then you're going to wake up
in the Ford Foundation.
I was going to say at the Bohemian Grove, and the president of the Ford Foundation is going to say, we're going to burn you alive.
Well, if I wound up to be Bohemian Grove, I'm kind of interested to see what goes on there. I think I'd fit in. All right. On that note, it is always Friday night.
Friday night. I'm thinking that we just might fly away to someplace they don't know who we are. Now I'm riding shotgun in your car. We drive through the city like explorers going 65. Flowing hair flying across your face. We left on Friday, now it's Saturday. Pressed jeans buttoned up, jeans iron slipping up. Red shoes walking slow, headphones blaring 3 stacks. Sunglasses flaring out, thick watch hanging low. Studded belt pulled taut, 3 stacks on the radio. Friday night, I'm thinking that we just might run away to some place we can be who we are. We can be who